The Galactic Academy's observation deck hummed with the usual cacophony of 100 different species trying to coexist. Hale stood near the viewport, her dark eyes reflecting the swirling nebula outside, while around her, cadets from across the known galaxy debated the universe's greatest mysteries with the confidence only youth could provide. Earth, scoffed Drex, a Cathari with scales that shimmered like oil on water. Another human myth, like their supposed Death World origins. His mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his kind. Hayal's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. She'd learned in her first week at the Academy that defending humanity's homeworld was futile. To the galaxy at large, Earth had become something between legend and joke, a planet so dangerous, so impossibly hostile, that it couldn't possibly exist. Humans, they believed, were simply another species that had evolved in the safer colonies, inventing a dramatic origin story to seem more interesting. Kevin, her training partner and the only other human in their cohort, touched her shoulder gently. "Let it go," he whispered. "It's not worth it." But Instructor Velos, a towering sentinel with skin like living stone, had other ideas. "Cadet Hayal," his voice rumbled through the deck. "You've been unusually quiet during this debate. Surely you have thoughts on your species' mythical homeworld." The observation deck fell silent. All eyes and eye analogs turned toward her. Hayal straightened her uniform. "Permission to speak freely, Instructor?" "Granted. Earth is real," she said simply. "And it's not a myth or a Death World exaggeration. It's home." The laughter started immediately. Even some of the more diplomatic species couldn't suppress their amusement. "Hayal," Drex wheezed between clicks. "Your own species' databases list Earth's location as classified or unknown. Half the galaxy thinks it's a propaganda tool from the human colonial administration. You can't possibly—" "I was born there," Hayal interrupted, her voice cutting through the mockery like a blade. "In a city called Istanbul. I watched the Bosphorus Strait every morning before school. I felt earthquakes that would terrify most of you. I survived weather patterns that shift from freezing to scorching within hours." Kivan's eyes widened. In 3 years of training together, she'd never told him this. Instructor Velos tilted his massive head. "You claim to be Earthborn? That's a serious assertion, Cadet. The Academy has regulations about—" "I know the regulations, sir." Hayal walked toward the center of the deck, and the crowd parted instinctively. "I also know that every species here has biological markers unique to their homeworld. Gravity adaptation, atmospheric composition, radiation resistance, all coded into our DNA." She stopped at the environmental control panel. "This Academy maintains a baseline atmosphere. 0.4 Earth standard gravity, 18% oxygen, 72 degrees Fahrenheit, minimal radiation exposure. It's considered the universal comfort zone." Her fingers hovered over the controls. "But it's a compromise. A diluted version of what any of us evolved in." "What are you suggesting?" Velos asked, though something in his ancient voice suggested he already knew. "A demonstration, sir." Hayal's hand moved to her uniform collar, where every cadet wore a biomonitor, a device that screamed alarms if their life signs entered dangerous territory. "With your permission, I'd like to adjust the environmental controls to Earth standard conditions. Just in this section of the deck." The murmuring started immediately. Several cadets backed away. "That's insane," Drex hissed. "Earth standard gravity would crush half the species here. The oxygen content alone would be within safety margins for observation," Hayal countered. "Behind the barrier field, but I'll be standing in it. No protective gear, no enhancements." She looked directly at her instructor. "If Earth isn't real, if humans didn't evolve there, my biomonitor will trigger immediate medical protocols. I'll collapse within seconds." Kivan stepped forward. "Hayal, you don't have to prove anything to these—" "Yes, I do." She met his eyes, and he saw something there he'd never seen before. Not anger, pride. "Our homeworld isn't a myth, Kivan, and I'm tired of pretending it doesn't matter." Instructor Velos studied her for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he nodded. "Proceed. But the moment your biosigns destabilize, I'm pulling you out." Hayal's fingers danced across the control panel. A shimmering barrier field activated, isolating a 10-meter section of the deck. Through the transparent energy wall, the other cadets watched as she input coordinates that made several of them gasp. Gravity, 1.0 Earth Standard, 2.5x Academy Baseline. Oxygen content, 21% temperature, 95-degree alphas with 60%. Humidity radiation, solar equivalent UV. Exposure. Those settings are lethal, someone whispered. The environmental processors groaned as they worked to create conditions that shouldn't exist on a space station. The air inside the barrier field shimmered, became thick, became heavy. Hyle walked calmly into the zone. The change was immediate and visible. Her shoulders sagged under gravity that would have driven most species to their knees. Sweat broke across her forehead as the temperature spiked. The oxygen-rich air should have been toxic, the UV radiation damaging to unprotected skin. Every cadet's biomonitor began, shrieking proximity alarms warning them they were too close to lethal conditions, but Hyal's monitor remained silent. She stood in Earth-standard conditions, her chest rising and falling in steady breaths, while around her alarms wailed for everyone except her. The contrast was stunning. Cadets who'd laughed minutes ago now stared in disbelief. Impossible, Drex breathed, his scales flattening in distress. Kevin moved closer to the barrier, his own monitor screaming warnings. Hyal. She smiled at him through the shimmering field. Then she did something that made the entire deck go silent. She raised her hand, just lifted it casually as if the crushing gravity were nothing. As if the toxic oxygen weren't burning through her lungs, as if the radiation weren't breaking down cellular structures. And her biomonitor stayed silent. This, Hyal said, her voice slightly strained but clear, is a pleasant spring day in Istanbul. This is what I trained in before I came here. This is what my ancestors survived for millions of years. She lowered her hand, flexing her fingers. Earth is real, and humans aren't from some safe colony world. We're from a planet that tried to kill us every single day, and we thrived anyway. Instructor Velos's stone face was unreadable, but when he spoke, there was something like respect in his rumble. How long can you maintain this? Hours, sir. I grew up in it. She glanced at the gathered cadets. But I think I've made my point. She deactivated the environmental changes and the barrier field dissolved. As the atmosphere returned to comfortable baseline, Hyal walked out, her biomonitor still silent, still showing perfect health parameters. The observation deck remained quiet. No one laughed now. Drex approached slowly, his earlier arrogance replaced with something closer to awe. I apologize, Cadet Hyal, I didn't understand. Most don't, Hyal replied, not unkindly. The galaxy sees humans as just another species. Weaker than Sentinels, less intelligent than Cerebrates, slower than Cathari. She looked around at the assembled cadets. But we're survivors. We come from a world that made us earn every breath, every step, every moment of existence. That's not a myth. That's our legacy. Kevin stood beside her, and she could see the questions in his eyes. Questions about why she'd never told him about what else Earth held, about the homeworld he'd only seen in sanitized colony records. Will you tell me about it? He asked quietly. About real Earth? Hale smiled. Every story, every detail. But Kevin, she gestured to the viewport, to the stars beyond. You should know that every human carries Earth inside them. Colony born or not, we're all children of that impossible planet. Instructor Velos cleared his throat, drawing attention back to him. Class dismissed. Except you, Cadet Hyal. We need to discuss updating your official records. His stone face might have held the faintest hint of a smile. And perhaps scheduling a lecture on actual Earth conditions for the xenobiology department. It seems the Academy's database is incomplete. As the other cadets filed out, many cast new glances at Hyal. Not mockery now, but curiosity, respect, even fear. The human who'd stood in conditions that would kill them, whose biomonitor stayed silent in hell itself. Hyal watched them go, then turned to the viewport. Somewhere out there, hidden and protected and real, was a blue-green marble spinning in the dark. A death world, a forge, a home Earth was real, and now at least in this small corner of the galaxy. No one would forget it. Kevin joined her at the viewport, and together they stood in the comfortable, diluted atmosphere of the Academy, air that would have seemed impossibly gentle to their ancestors who'd climbed down from trees, crossed continents on foot and eventually reached for the stars. HFY, Kevin murmured. using the old human phrase that had become their species' unofficial motto. Hayal nodded, her reflection smiling in the transparisteel. Humanity, fuck on yeah. Outside, the nebula swirled in colors no earthbound eye had ever seen. But inside, two humans stood as living proof that sometimes the legends were real, and sometimes the myths were just truth that the galaxy wasn't ready to believe. End.